Matt Chapman just won a Gold Glove for the Giants at third base in 2024. Here's why he could be playing shortstop on opening day in 2025.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide episodes 3 days a week for now, 2 months out of the year, 3 days a week, then 5 days a week for the rest, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting the show since prior to the 2019 season, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you are following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And coming up on today's show, like I said, Matt Chapman, shortstop for the Giants on opening day 2025. It's possible. And you know why it's possible? It's possible if they were to sign Ha-Seong Kim, which does almost feel like an inevitability. And this was being first reported here by Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic yesterday. He writes, one problem for the San Francisco Giants if they sign free agent Ha-Seong Kim is that they would remain without a shortstop until Kim recovered from shoulder surgery. Enter Matt Chapman. The Giants' third baseman has told club officials he would be willing to move to short until Kim returned, one of numerous scenarios club officials are considering as they seek creative ways to reshape their roster, according to sources briefed on their discussions. And Rosenthal continues, if Chapman went to short, the Giants could go with Tyler Fitzgerald at third. They could also use Casey Schmidt, an excellent defender, who hit .311 with a .991 OPS in 49 plate appearances against left-handed pitching last season. And then he mentions David Villar and Brett Wisely, etc. But Rosenthal continues to point out that Chapman's team-first approach is one reason the Giants signed him to a 6-year, $151 million extension in September. His willingness to play short also might reflect the ability of Buster Posey, the team's new president of baseball operations, to connect with players. And so for Kim, Rosenthal adds that he underwent surgery to repair a small tear in the labrum of his right shoulder, his throwing shoulder, in October. The timetable for his return is uncertain, but he is expected to miss at least the early part of the season and possibly the entire first half. That's the first time I've heard that. The Giants, as they seek to improve their pitching and defense, are doing due diligence on all available options from Kim to shortstop Willy Adames to right-hander Corbin Burns and others. Burns attended St. Mary's College in the Bay Area and is a favorite of new Giants general manager Zach Manassian, who was the Milwaukee Brewers pro scouting director during Burns' tenure with the club. And part of the appeal of Kim is that he did not receive the qualifying offer, so he wouldn't cost the Giants. It says, Rosenthal writes, a draft pick, but actually the Giants would give up 2 draft picks just for signing a single qualifying offer player, and that would include Corbin Burns. That would include Willy Adames as well. And so, yeah, that is part of the appeal, and just lower cost. So, anyway, the main takeaway here, first 2 things. I mean, if Kim has to miss half the season, that's a big, red flag is not the word, but a big hump to get over in terms of agreeing or desiring to sign Ha-Seong Kim to what I would imagine. I think under this front office, you're going to see fewer short-term deals with opt-outs. I think if the Giants wanted Ha-Seong Kim, they would just say, look, we value you this much. We know you're going to miss some time, but it's only in season number 1, and we're going to give you a longer-term deal that is fair. We're not trying to discount you just because you got hurt. We'll obviously want a discount for the time you'll miss, but other than that, we'll give you fair value. But I don't know. I mean, I appreciate and I agree with what Rosenthal is saying here about Chapman being a team player and a willingness to play short, and I think he could do it and do it fine. At the same time, they didn't have Ha-Seong Kim last year, nor did they have a shortstop who's departed in free agency. They just played Tyler Fitzgerald there. And so why not just have done it last year, if this was such an issue? But would they be better off? I mean, this is where I think actually it could possibly make more sense, is if you put Tyler Fitzgerald at second and Chapman at short, and then let Casey Schmidt play his natural position at third. And so Buster Posey has talked about pitching and defense a lot. I mean, he hasn't spoken a lot, but when he has spoken, that has been an emphasis. And I think, I don't know, obviously Chapman moving from a place where he just won a Gold Glove, we've seen it before. Like Manny Machado has tried to play short, and it's just not as good when you take a guy out of his position where he's best and then put him at a position where he's not as good, and then you're kind of weakening your defense. But at the same time, it would allow you to give Casey Schmidt some looks, potentially. I think that's the alignment I like. I don't really care for Fitzgerald at third and Chapman at short. I'd rather just Fitzgerald play short and keep Chapman where he's at. But when I say Ha-Seong Kim feels like somewhat of an inevitability, this has come up a few times because we're going to get into another Corbin Burns, not just rumor, but report coming from a local reporter this time. And so there's a little more weight that I put on that. A very good local reporter, I may add. And so I think if you were to sign a player like Corbin Burns, first of all, there's a qualifying offer player. And just a refresher, the qualifying offer, it's like a 1-year offer that's the average of the top 125 highest paid players in a particular year. And you can give it to guys if they've never received it in the past and if they've spent the whole season on their current team. And so all the best players who have never received one before and spent the whole season with that team that they were on are going to get these. So Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, Willy Adames, they all got them. And then they're obviously going to reject a 1-year offer that was like $21 million. Like Juan Soto, not taking 1 year, $21 million. Neither is Corbin Burns. Neither is Willy Adames. But the thing is, when they reject the qualifying offer, as of course they do, there are penalties to teams that sign those players. And it's a competitive balance thing. And for the Giants, as a team that did cross the first luxury tax threshold last year for the first time in a long time, they would have even stiffer penalties. The penalties get harsher if you're a luxury tax paying team, and the Giants were last year. And so, like I said, second and fifth round picks, $1 million in international bonus pool money. And then if they were to sign another qualifying offer free agent, there are even more penalties. And so it's like hard enough, not that I think it's an impossibility at all, but to see them signing one qualifying offer free agent, like a Corbin Burns or a Willy Adames, I just don't really see a scenario where they go and get a Corbin Burns and a Willy Adames. And that's what I think personally, that Corbin Burns makes more sense. Max Fried is also a good pitcher who makes sense, but he also got the qualifying offer. And so if you were to end up with one of those guys, then I don't think Willy Adames is someone that they would get. And then Ha-Seong Kim makes so much sense. He's such a good defender. I love watching Ha-Seong Kim play defense. Also plays with a lot of energy, hits left-handed pitching really well. Not a platoon player. When you provide so much defensive value, you don't need to be platooned. And he holds his own against righties. He's just really good against lefties. And a very, very plus defender at short. And so as a long-term piece, I really like Ha-Seong Kim. And, the fact that Matt Chapman has reportedly expressed this willingness to play short speaks to the fact that the Giants are certainly interested in Ha-Seong Kim, which has been pretty obvious all offseason. So coming up in just a minute, another Corbin Burns, again, not rumor, but report from a local reporter linking him to the Giants. We'll get into it momentarily. And before we do, today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. I love going to live events, no matter what it is, sports, especially baseball. I love traveling on the road to see the Giants. This past year, I got out to Fenway Park. I went to Denver, Coors Field. I went to Petco Park. I went to Dodger Stadium. And with Game Time, that's where I go to buy my tickets. And it's not just sports. It's music, theater, comedy, whatever you can think of where tickets are involved, basically. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is kind of a nightmare if you have to do that. Some of my favorite features include the Game Time Guarantee, which means if you find tickets in the same section a row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, here we go. More Corbin Burns. This guy just keeps coming up and up and up. And we also have something else to say about Ha-Seong Kim that comes from this same tweet thread by Susan Slusser. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen today. Coming up next week, guess what? It's the winter meetings, and that is where a lot is going to go down. Juan Soto, pretty widely expected to sign, if not at the winter meetings, before the winter meetings, and so that could open up a lot of activity. We do say stuff like this every year, like Shohei Ohtani, when he signs, it'll open the floodgates, and then it kind of didn't, and things still dragged on. Think about how Snell and Chapman fell to the Giants in spring training, and Jorge Soler. So hopefully that's what happens. I think that this front office will be more aggressive than the last. They're not hunting for bargain deals as much, although if they're planning on cutting payroll like we have heard repeatedly that they are, then who knows? I do think they'll be more aggressive, and I think they'll identify their guys and that they'll go out and try to get them. And as I have said, the Giants could very much afford a Corbin Burns based on even reducing their payroll from last year to this year, because their opening day payroll last year was like $208 million. And this year right now, they're currently sitting at about $155. So you could add a $30 million Corbin Burns, be at $185, and you'd still be significantly down from last year, over $20 million down. And then if you could get Ha-Seong Kim for an average of $13 million a year over, 6 years or something, then there is you would still be under that number from last year, and you could trade away some guys. There are some guys making some money who are potential trade bait. So anyway, this Corbin Burns tweet comes from none other than Susan Slusser, who is a very reliable Giants reporter. And let's see, I'm looking through, refreshing Twitter constantly because this is the time of year that things go down. And so we just see now that Shane Bieber is returning to the Guardians. So Bieber off the board. It is a 1-year contract. Anyway, that, Bieber could have made some sense for the Giants, but he is returning to the Cleveland Guardians. So Susan Slusser earlier today tweeted out the following. She said, I'm hearing the Giants have been in contact with Corbin Burns, who'd certainly be a superb option after losing Snell to the Dodgers. He's got the kind of personality I think would appeal to Buster Posey too. Bulldog reputation. And I couldn't agree with this more. Somebody whose Twitter handle is Cup of Mets says, wasn't this reported last week? Fair question, because we were talking about this at least earlier this week, but it was reported last week. And Slusser responded to that by saying they hadn't talked to him by then, so not sure how that would be. So this just goes to show you that you shouldn't believe everything that you hear. In fact, almost, I would venture to say, the vast majority of things that you hear on Twitter or whatever your social media platform of choice is these days, the vast majority, there's been a takeover of people who don't actually have sources claiming to have sources. So there's just a select few. If you're a Giants fan and you want to know who to trust, Susan Slusser, Alex Pavlovich, national reporters would be like Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some local reporters as well. But Slusser, Pavlovich, in terms of breaking Giants news, and then Passan is like the ultimate god of baseball reporting. But anyway, Cup of Mets then said maybe it wasn't last week, a few days ago. Think Mark Feinsand mentioned they reached out to his camp. Whatever case may be, good fit. And then Slusser said no one has reported that. Interest reported. Talks not previously reported. So that's an important clarification because Susan Slusser's tweet says, I'm hearing the Giants have been in contact with Corbin Burns. So, again, not surprising. And if there's a guy worth giving up your 2nd and 5th round draft picks for, it's one of the very top pitchers in the game, especially when you compare him with Logan Webb. And for the first time in forever, it would feel. And I know I've been a critic of long-term deals for pitchers, but there are certain pitchers I make an exception for, and Corbin Burns is one of those guys. Like, it's not every day that you get one of the very best pitchers in the game, 30 years old. It's not like he's super young, but it's not like he's some of these deals we've seen in recent years where like Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander got crazy high AAV, like 3-year deals. And those ended up being good for like 1 year. And then the next 2 were really bad and really expensive. And the Mets tried to get and did get rid of those contracts so they can fall apart quickly. But Corbin Burns, Bakersfield native, St. Mary's College, I think that there's a real possibility here. And like I said, a lot of people say like, oh, any team can afford these players. They just choose not to. When I'm saying this, I'm not saying it in that context. I'm literally saying it in the context of this was their payroll last year, about 208, currently sitting at 155. Corbin Burns is going to cost in the neighborhood of $30 million a year, most likely. And so you absolutely could add that and still come in significantly under where you were last year. Of course, you'd have additional moves to make, but you could make some and you could trade guys. And so if I was a betting man, I don't know what the betting odds are over on FanDuel right now. If you can do that. In fact, that's something I'm going to want to check out, and we're going to talk about FanDuel a little bit later on. But on FanDuel, I want to know what the odds are of Corbin Burns, because Ha-Seong Kim, I think that these guys make a lot of sense for the Giants. And so Slusser continues, and someone on Twitter named Vinny says, if you're signing Burns, then the plan is to win now. So Adames and Alonso should be in play as well. And this is where I take, not issue, but where I throw a little dose of reality around. If you're signing Burns, first of all, I can't personally, I kind of can't stand, maybe I should be able to stand it, because a lot of people are confused about the direction of the Giants. And they're not entering a teardown. They're not a team that does full-scale rebuilds. I want to emphasize, there's a draft lottery now. You can't even pick in the top 10 2 years in a row. And so tanking, losing on purpose, being bad on purpose serves no purpose for a team like the Giants that have the money to be able to spend close to at least $200 million a year. You should be able to be competitive every year. Now, they've failed to a large extent, but they've also not been terrible. So you look at some of these bad teams that did do this strategy of kind of tanking, we're talking well over 100 losses in a year. Like, that is not what I want to watch. I watch every game. I don't know about you. Hopefully, a lot of you do. A lot of you watch some games. I don't want the Giants to be bad. And so, to me, it is not at all surprising. This was the strategy under Farhan Zaidi as well. They just didn't come away with the guys that they went after. They went after Bryce Harper. They went after Aaron Judge. They went after Shohei Ohtani. They went after Yoshinobu Yamamoto. It's not for lack of trying. They had an agreement with Carlos Correa. So those confused about what is the direction of the Giants, I don't understand that. They're trying to win. It's not easy to win. This is an extremely competitive business. But anyway, so the question is, like, if you're saying Burns, then the plan is to win now. Yes, to me, obviously the plan is to win now. But then, so Adames and Alonso should be in play as well. The issue with that is there's been legitimate reporting that they are wanting to cut payroll. Now, you can complain about that validly. I have no problem with anyone saying, I'm unhappy that they plan on cutting payroll after so many disappointing seasons since 2016 outside of 2021. But if you're at 155 now, and you add Corbin Burns for, say, $30 million a year, you're at 185. Willy Adames probably going to cost, just estimating, probably going to cost $25 million a year. So then that brings you to 210. You've already exceeded last year's payroll. And then you talk about Pete Alonso as well. I don't know, another $25 million a year. Just estimating, you're at 235, and that's not luxury tax payroll. That's not, there's a bunch of additions that get made to luxury tax payroll. So you would be exceeding the second luxury tax threshold if you did these moves. So it's unrealistic. And for Slusser, her response is to this, she says, quote, I think we can safely say Kim. And so that's like very noteworthy that she says, I think we can safely say Kim. So that is possibly inside information here, where she's not saying that they're signing Ha-Seong Kim, but she's not saying that they're signing Ha-Seong Kim. And Susan Slusser is a very excellent reporter for the Chronicle. So the follow-up, I'm just reading through some of these tweets. How realistic, from Sports Fan, they ask, how realistic is Burns, Susan? He almost makes too much sense. I just worry about whether they give him the big contract he's going to get. What do you think? Slusser says they need another frontline starter, and he'd fit very nicely. Who knows how negotiations go, obviously. And so on and on and on and on. There's really nothing else. Brian says, can we sign him? Slusser says they have the money to do it. This is what I'm saying. Will they bite the bullet and actually spend it? Would be an interesting way to signal how Posey might be approaching things. And this is interesting just to read through this. Sports Fan says, to me, I see him as I did Chapman last year. He's the kind of guy like Webb as well that just kind of fits the culture here and are guys you would want to build around. He is also just about everything they want in a pitcher and would be an attractive fit in a pitcher's park. Slusser says, I think that's exactly the thinking. And then lastly, man, she responded to a lot, so it's actually worth kind of reading through the whole thread if you get a chance on Twitter. But Brian says, Burns seems like the season's priority. Do you think they're waiting to ink Ha-Seong Kim until they can come to an agreement with Burns in case Burns or even Fried goes somewhere else and we'd have the room to take on Adames' qualifying offer? I think that's a really good question from Brian. Let's see if Brian follows me. Come on, Brian. Not a follower of me, but Slusser says, I think with Lee and Melvin both being big fans of Kim, they'd like Kim a lot. I don't think it has much to do with Burns pursuit. And so I actually kind of disagree because of the qualifying offer mentioned there. So anyway, that's kind of all we're going to say on that. Although, let's see. Yeah. Oh, there's a question about Soto. There's a question about Soto that I think is worth asking. So we will get into that and also just preview the Giants announcing some hires on the coaching staff, actually finalizing their coaching staff and making some hires to their front office. So we'll get into all of that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So I would be looking at the most lopsided odds I can find, placing that $5 bet, and then hopefully winning that $150 in bonus bets if my $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, here we go. We're going to get into, I could just have kept reading. I didn't even realize there were only a few things that Slusser had said that I had seen, and then I got into it, and we just kept going because that's a really interesting thread. So I'll keep reading that and maybe tweeting about it later on in the day. Follow me on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. And thanks again for making your Locked On Giants your first listen today. Everydayers, next week we will have the winter meetings covered, and we will certainly, whether we've done 3 episodes in the week or not, we will have you covered for any significant Giants news as soon as humanly possible. We may even do like a live stream just to get it out there as quickly as possible. So that's our dedication to you, the listener, to giving you everything you need to know about what's going on with the Giants. And it's a very interesting offseason. Baseball is slow in its offseason, and it's been slow. But Juan Soto, once he signs, and that's probably going to happen soon from all we're hearing. Jeff Passan, by the way, probably the most trustworthy baseball reporter I heard him say in an interview just the other day that he's likely to sign before the winter meetings start. He's likely to sign by Sunday. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so I could keep reading through these tweets, but I would go on, and who knows where it would lead us. There is one question about Soto. I'll get to that, and that's last. Michael says, regardless of Soto's preference, it would just be nice to know the Giants offered the most money to him, despite him turning down the opportunity to come to a solo market where he can become the king of SF. Burns would be fantastic, but getting a big-time position player is key. Slusser says, I love Soto and would throw whatever he wants at him, but it's not my money, sadly. His age, etc., he's the guy for me. All right, props to Slusser. I mean, I agree, but also, Corbin Burns is not a bad consolation prize. Corbin Burns is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and if you paired him with Logan Webb and Buster Posey talking about pitching and defense, then obviously I want Soto. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't, but it has been a little odd after all these pursuits of the top position players in recent years. By the way, that deal for Harper is looking like a big bargain, and the Giants should have blown the Phillies out of the water and just signed Bryce Harper. That's neither here nor there. But anyway, lastly, I do just want to point out the Giants have made several front office additions official. They've also finalized their coaching staff. Melvin returns as manager. Christensen, bench coach. Matt Williams, third base coach. Mark Hallberg, first base coach. We know JP Martinez was promoted to pitching coach. Garvin Alston returns as bench coach. This is interesting. Pat Burrell now has the title of hitting coach, whereas it was Justin Veely and Pedro Guerrero ahead of Pat Burrell. And Pat Burrell was kind of more of like the mental side hitting coach. But now his title is hitting coach, and the assistant hitting coaches are Damon Minor and Oscar Bernard, who are Minor being promoted from within, Bernard being brought in from the outside. Catching coach Alex Berg, I'm not too familiar with him, and if he was here last year, I need to look more into that. Taira Uematsu, who's been with the Giants for as long as I've been a fan, I mean forever, promoted to quality control coach. And in the front office, the Giants have made some moves. We already talked about Bobby Evans and Jeff Berry. Evans, former general manager of the Giants, spent 25 years in the Giants front office until he was fired after the 2018 season and replaced by Farhan Zaidi. And Jeff Berry, Posey's former agent, is going to be a special advisor, and so is Bobby Evans. Hadi Rod, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, joins the Giants as director of pro scouting. So I don't know if that's exactly the role that was left vacant by Zach Manassian, but he's brought in after being the professional evaluation team leader for the Pirates the last 2 years. And prior to that, he was with the Marlins as their professional scouting director from November 2019 through the 2022 season. He's also held numerous player development and scouting roles with the Yankees, 2012 to 13, 14 to 19, and with the Rangers, 2013 to 14. Also, Pike Goldschmidt joins the Giants as the new director of baseball strategy. Goldschmidt previously worked with the Athletics organization for 8 years, most recently as director baseball development since January 2023. Prior to joining the A's in 2017, the Albany, California native completed an internship with the Pirates in 2015 and was a baseball operations assistant with the Baltimore Orioles in 2016. So I think that last one stands out to me the most because he was the director, he was the director of baseball development with the Oakland A's since 2023. And I don't know, the A's do a pretty good job with baseball development. because they go through these cycles. They're bad and then they get good kind of without fail. And they're already trending that way again. And so I like that hire. I don't know Pike Goldschmidt. I don't know Hadi Rod. I don't know much about Damon Minor or Oscar Bernard. And so we need to do more research there. But that's just worth pointing out that these were announced by the Giants in recent days. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. By the way, if anything goes down over the weekends, we will be there to cover it with an emergency podcast. So we're here for you. Your team every day, especially when stuff goes down, including weekends. So anyway, thanks again for listening today. Winter meetings next week. It's definitely a time to hit that subscribe button, bell notification button, and we'll be here for you whenever anything goes down. And even if stuff doesn't go down, we're here for you. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.